What's up, everybody? It is Saturday, April 1st. I've sold out of Magic. I'm done. I'm never playing Death Shadow again. April Fools. Whatever you got to say to get people's attention at the start of these videos. Anyway, here's another Grixis Death Shadow voiceover league. So strap in and enjoy. List just the exact same we've been playing for the most part. Like, I'm convinced that this is about the best iteration that I can put together the deck for my play style. So if you haven't seen some of the previous videos where we go a little more in detail on the deck list, feel free to go check those out. Otherwise, here we are, round number one. I get to start off on the draw. Got a good hand, got some interaction with Bolt, some card advantage with Iteration, a threat with Ragavan, now a second threat with Shredder. So we feel pretty confident. Opponent plays Polluted Delta Pass. I don't want to play this Ragavan into just like a 1-mana removal spell, so I decided to just pass it back. Unfortunately, they've got an Otherworldly Gaze for a Narc Amoeba and then a Stitcher Supplier, so we know it's Crabvine. They go ahead and get the Vengevine back here, but I'm going to have the Bolt to kill off the Vengevine itself. And hopefully this Ledger Shredder next turn will allow me to stonewall a little bit. Kind of ease up some of the pressure. My opponent is down to one card, so hopefully they won't be able to like double creature here, get back Vengevines again. I find a Wonder, decide to attack in for a couple, so we're just gonna again mitigate a little bit of this damage on us. Find a Kroxa, not our best threat in the world, but we do just get like a free ditch of it with this Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize sees Gurmag Angler, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so excited. But I got to take that because my Ledger Shredder is not keeping up with a Gurmag Angler right away. But here, we're just going to kind of block up the skies, which is weird to say against a deck that features Stitcher's Supplier, Rotting Rats, Vengevine, Gurmag Angler. Like, hey, I really got to clog up the skies to have a chance here. But opponents just like digging for more Creeping Chills, things like that. I'm trying to be as passive with my life total as I can because I don't want them to just like randomly flip into double Creeping Chill or whatever. But they are being very, very aggressive with their attacks, which I mean, I love to see because it gives me the chance of just like, I don't know, top decking a removal spell, killing a Stitcher Supplier, attacking back for lethal, just like crazy lines. So we'll take that. Love to see it in game number one. Definitely the kind of deck that stealing game one is huge against because we get a lot better post board. We get to bring in things like the unlicensed hearses. I think we brought in uh, unlicensed hearses and dress downs. Dress down mainly just stops triggers on like Stitcher Supplier, stops haste on Vengevines, random little stuff like that. ETB effects on the rats, burglar rats, rotting rats, whatever rat it is. So we kept a one lander, but we've got Ragavan into unlicensed hearse. I think with like this double Hedron Crab start, my opponent's a little bit less likely to block. So I'm correct. We get a couple, or we get our extra mana, get our hearse down. And now the goal is just to mitigate the effect of the graveyard as much as we possibly can. Like Creeping Chill, I really don't want to fight over this because I'm kind of a little worried that like my opponent might have something else to do. So I want to limit my unlicensed hearse activations unless I absolutely have to use it, or B can use it at the end of their turn where they're kind of relying on sorcery speed effects. And if I got a situation like this where my opponent just spends their turn playing out a Master of Death, then cool, I get to kill that. I get to exile the Master of Death and the Wonder, start hitting like multiple value pieces every turn instead of just trying to pick one thing out at a time. Crank in with Ragavan. There's no way we're casting a Secret Keeper. We'll just hang out on Drown in the Lock. Opponent goes for Narcomoeba and a Prized Amalgam. All right. We'll definitely exile a Prized Amalgam. Hit that Grave Crawler while we're at it. And opponent scoops it up to a Croaksa, exiling their last or discarding their last card. So it might have been like a Assassin's Trophy or something. So match number 2. Hand number 1 was like super land flooded. Hand number 2, a little bit better. We got Ragavan, couple removal spells, iteration. We're up against burn, so really hope we can find a second land pretty quickly. Cracks in with Goblin Guide, skewers us down to 10. I decided to play out the Shadow. Unfortunately, they do fire off the removal spell at the Shadow, so since we haven't seen our second land, we're probably pretty dead. Like, they do have 3 cards in hand to our 6 life. We've got Drown in the lock. So we have like a little bit of fight in us. And if we kill this Goblin Guide, maybe counter a spell, then who knows? We might have some sort of chance if they just have like absolutely nothing. But if they had just like lands, I'd imagine they would play 1 or 2 of them out. Make it so if they top deck a Canopy land, it's a bit better. So we'll sit on our double drown. I have no intention of going down to 4 life. Or, yeah, going down to 4. I don't want to put myself dead to 1 spell. Let's see, Lava Spike on top of their library. I think that iteration right there was a little greedy. So I see Swift Spear on top, which means I have to answer that. And if they have like Swift Spear plus a spell, then I'm a little dicey here. I decide to take the 3 off of the Skewer the Critics and Unholy Heat the Swift Spear, mainly because I want to hold on to this Drown in the lock as best I can. If I fire off the Drown on the Skewer and take the 2 off the Swift Spear, yes, I take less damage, but I no longer have a counter spell for anything off the top. And that's a little bit worse for me. But, I mean, somehow we're still, like, playing Magic. Not really sure how, but Thoughtseize we don't need. Bobble them. See a Spike on top. All right, we've got a Drown in the lock. Never mind. So they had multiple burn spells, or they had 1 in hand, saw 1 on top, and they finally started just throwing them off. So game 2, sideboarding, take out a bunch of Thoughtseizes, take out, I think, an iteration, bring in like EEs for what's his name, Sanctifier on Vec. Bring in maybe a Dress Down or 2, then the Spell Pierces, Fluster Storms. So we go for Croaksa, and opponent paths our Croaksa, which is fantastic for us. That means we get a card out of hand and a land, which with this expressive iteration and another Croaksa, we're thrilled to have more lands in hand. We'll just fire off Croaksa. Start working on developing our mana even more. If opponent fires off burn spells on us, that gets us closer to this double shadow. But really, I want to find like a Drown in the lock off of this iteration. And then I can, Fluster Storm works too. Then I can start working on getting down shadows. Play out the E on 2 and catch the Sanctifier. I feel like with double shadow, Fluster Storm, and Croaksa in the yard, the only way that I'm losing is to Sanctifier. So I'm kind of just preemptively taking the opportunity to fight over Sanctifier. So like if opponent doesn't hit a land drop here, which they don't, then this Croaksa looks really enticing. if I just catch them with like a couple spells in hand, but I guess not dealing damage to myself is a little more enticing. So if you think about the life total here at 10 life, if my opponent does find a third land like they do, there's no combination of spells they can have that kills me right there. So they just fire off their burn spells for, I guess they thought Searing Blaze would kill the shadow, so they threw stuff at it. But because they put me down to a life total where I could fetch and shock and present lethal, I was completely okay with that. Still had Croxa sitting around. Game number 3, another mulligan, but we've got Ragavan, we've got some removal spells, Bobble to help find more. Ledger Shredder off the top, pretty good with our Mishra's Bobble here. All right. So since we found Spell Pierce, we'll just like play out Ragavan, hold up the Spell Pierce. And thankfully they throw a removal spell at the Ragavan. Now, obviously, if they follow this up with like land Searing Blaze, it's a little unfortunate. But if they follow it up with anything else, especially like they did a removal spell on the Ragavan, then that's positive for us. Like they've now spent 6 burn worth of damage dealing with the Ragavan when we're at 9 life. Like that was the lethal burn they needed. They had the 2 bolts and the skewer, and they spent 6 damage on Ragavan, 3 more on Ledger Shredder. And so now we're able to like recoup our hand a little bit. We know they have a deflecting palm in hand. They find a Boros Charm, so we're gonna counter that one, get a little damage in, grow our shredders a bit. The good thing about Boros Charm is it's not really live unless you want it to be live. So I know that if I'm attacking into Boros Charm, I know I've got an answer. They don't know I have an answer, but I get to know that I'm not making that attack unless I want to make that attack. Here, if they Boros Charm me. So let me kind of go over this turn real quick. I know they have Deflecting Palm. They've got Rift Bolt on Suspend. If I attack and they Deflecting Palm my Ledger Shredder, I go down to 6. They untap, Rift Bolt me down to 3. If they find a burn spell, that would be lethal, but I get Ragavan damage in. The Ragavan creates me a treasure, so now I've got Drown in the lockup. And if they cast their spell that they draw for turn, then I get 2 Ledger Shredder triggers. If either of those Ledger Shredders flip over a live card, then my opponent will have taken 4 this turn, go to 8. Either Ledger Shredder gets a trigger, then all of a sudden that's, say, 4/2/2 is 8 damage. My opponent's dead. If they don't find anything, then I still get to just attack in for 7, put them to 1, have Drown in the Lock active. If they Deflecting Palm the Ragavan to stop me from making a treasure token, then I go to, I take 2 off of this Ragavan. I go to 7, pass the turn. My opponent finds, or Rift Bolts me down to 4, and let's say they find a live spell. Now I can fetch and shock, go to 1, and have Drown in the Lock active. So either way, Drown in the Lock covers their top deck, regardless of what they Deflecting Palm. So that's a big part of why I made this attack with all 3 of them. Find a Skewer. I'm not casting that because I'm not tapping off of this Drown in the Lock. So opponent finds something we don't know. We get to Iteration, find a Croxa. So Iteration found Croxa Spell Pierce, and the immediate inclination is like, oh, get Spell Pierce. But we have a guaranteed kill here. So I've got 2 options. Option number 1 is I can crack the Bloodstained Mire and go for the Croxa. And my opponent's either got to like fire off their spell or take 3 and then be dead to everything on board. or I can do Croaks off like the Bloodstained Mire and the treasure token. The problem is if their last card is a burn spell and they point it at me, I cannot fetch twice to drown in the lock. But if I attack first, put them down to 1, play the Croxa, then either I've got the treasure token 2 and I can get basic swamp off of this Bloodstained Mire. So either they've got a burn spell in hand, they fire it off, I fetch up basic swamp, drown in the lock the burn spell, Croxa trigger kills them, or they don't have a burn spell, and they take 3 and die. Like either way is guaranteed lethal for me. And if they cast something during combat, I get to drown in the locket, ditch Croxa, grow the Ledger Shredder, and they're dead to that. So we go for the Croxa. Opponent's last card was a Lightning Bolt. We get the drown in the lock. So definitely won that game because we never tapped off the drown in the locks. All right, so this is round number 3. Our opening hand, pretty okay in an interactive matchup, and then opponent plays a Tron land and reveals a Reality Smasher off the top of the bauble. So it's Eldrazi Tron. Much worse against a Tron variant, especially if they just have natural Tron. But at least we get a Ledger Shredder down until it gets Warping Wailed. If you don't know Warping Wail, exiles a creature with power or toughness 1 or less. So I'm expecting that Reality Smasher that I saw earlier, which is why I'm just like playing out the Ragavan, holding up Terminate. I don't really want to pay mana to dash Ragavan every turn, especially if my opponent's likely to just make this play. So now I just get to untap with Ragavan, all my mana available, Expressive Iteration. See, Chalice of the Void, I'm definitely not casting that. And then pretty bad Iteration with some lands and junk, and opponent's got another Warping Wail, but we're going to stop that. And if that's the best thing they've got with 4 mana is Warping Wail, then I feel not great, but not terrible here. But they do find another Eldrazi Temple and get to all his dust us. So pretty good rip off of them. But we find a Croxa, so now we get to play and escape Croxa, get them empty-handed. Ditch a Karn the Great Creator. Escape Croxa, ditches an Ugin the Ineffable. So fantastic Croxa for us there. They whiff for a turn. We hit them for a Croxa. Play out Giganta. They untap. Of course, find an Ulamog. You know, as one does. So they get to hit both our Giganta and our Croxa. We're going to Unholy Heat our Croxa because the trigger, they're at 7 life. So maybe if we're able to like escape Croxa, chump block, bolt them, escape Croxa again, that's a potential line to lethal. So we untap, draw for turn. Another land is fine. Fetch land is actually good because that's another card towards escaping Croxa again. We know opponent or Croxa is going to be on chump block duty. So we need our opponent to not find a live spell so that they take damage off us escaping the Croxa. We need to find something to get into our graveyard. So I don't want to fire off this bolt at face in case I draw like a Ledger Shredder or something and want to be able to kill my own Ledger Shredder and just hope I don't like connive into a live spell and grow it. But Ledger Shredder as a chump blocker is fine too. But I just want to, or I guess it's not fine because I don't have 40 cards in my library. I just want to be able to kill something if I top deck it to escape the Croxa again. But I think realistically my out is another copy of Lightning Bolt, and that's it. Oh. Nice. So a bunch of back and forth luck there. Opponent ripped the the All Is Dust, or the second temple for All Is Dust. We ripped the Kroxa. They ripped the Ulamog. We ripped the second bolt. Game number 2. Decent hand. We get Ragavan in under Chalice. We have Terminate for a big payoff. If Ragavan gets to attack, if they play like turn 2 Chalice, then turn 2 for us, Ragavan gets to attack and we get to get down Kaito and start digging away. So there we go. Of course, we find like back-to-back Unholy Heat after the Chalice, but that's kind of whatever. I do not want to waste this Terminate on a Reality Smasher. Like between, or not a Reality Smasher. Yeah, Reality Smasher, a Matter Reshaper. Between Thought Knot Seer and Reality Smasher, like I want to save the Terminate for one of those. Find Karn. Karn goes and gets another Chalice. We find Turok that we brought in, which gets rid of Walking Ballista and Ugin. So they still have a Chalice in hand. Thought Not Me. I don't know why they took the Unholy Heat instead of the Terminate. Maybe it was a misclick. But we're absolutely going to terminate the Thought Knot and attack down the Karn. And we're just going to keep drawing stuff. They get down Snaring Bridge. Okay, we do have an Engineered Explosives in the deck. So we've got an out to draw to. We just need to like try to get to that and set it up as best we can. So you're going to see me filtering as much as humanly possible to try to find that EE. I could ultimate the I think this is the Chalice on 2. Yeah, so we're going to Drown in the Lock this because a lot of our dig spells and like our Ledger Shredder are 2 mana, so we need that. I could ultimate the Kaito here, but getting a Kroxa into play or a Shadow or something really doesn't do anything for me, so I don't think that's too necessary. Instead, we're just going to keep casting our spells. Get all these connive triggers. Hey, look, an EE. All right, so we only had to go through 40 cards to find it, but we found it. An opponent finds a Chalice on 3. It's fine with us. If you don't know, you can overpay for EE, so I can pay like red or black, blue, 2 red. Because of Sunburst, it comes in with 3 counters because I only paid 3 colors, but it gets around Chalice of the Void on 3 since I paid X equal to 4. So pretty fun little trick if you have that situation come up. Here we did Ledger Shredder, or we did Ultimate the Kaito. We got Ledger Shredder attacked and got 2 copies of Kroxa and a Death Shadow. So we were able to nuke the last card out of hand. We dealt 3 damage to them. Or no, they didn't have any cards in hand. So we just dealt 6 damage to them. And we got a Shadow on board. And now we have Kroxa to escape. So we could like escape Kroxa, deal 3, terminate the Kroxa, escape it again, deal 3. We can cast more of these spells into Ledger Shredder to get more connive triggers. But we just have like terminate for the Reality Smasher, ditch whatever. Bam. Which we didn't even need to cast the terminate. We had lethal anyway. But I thought that was really fun. So it just goes to show that boarding in something like EE has a lot of use in a match like that. Because there's going to be times where you just need access to it. If you have K Command, obviously that's better, but I'm not a big believer in K Command at the moment, so I'm more likely to have an EE. But you'll see me bring in an EE against like blue-white control and any Chalice of the Void deck, really, because there's plenty of times that you just get like some use out of it. All right, long-winded explanation. But we get to go to round number 4. Opponent start off with Spire Bluff Canal, no companion. So I'm assuming it's some sort of mURktide deck. I don't want to lead on Ragavan there into just like a straight up removal spell. We have Ledger Shredder, sure. I do have like Terminate and with land, sorcery, instant, I can get Unholy Heat online pretty quickly. Lightning Bolt would have been really nice if they didn't have that Ledger Shredder. All right, so they connive away, or I thought it was one of these iterations. I don't think they're going to discard an iteration or a mURktide, so I play the Ragavan, and they connive away a Lightning Bolt that they drew into. And they connive away a Bauble, so I know they've still got a mURktide, and they've got 2 unknowns. I think this turn was really awkward for me. I think I probably should have just terminated the Ledger Shredder and attacked with the Ragavan. And if they trade, they trade. If they don't trade, then I get a little bit more of a mana advantage. But I decided to attack with the Ragavan. They block, put creature in my yard, so I get to Unholy Heat the Shredder, Lightning Bolt the Ragavan, and now I've got Terminate for the mURktide, hopefully. But they do have 3 new cards that I don't know about, so it wouldn't be unreasonable for them to have a Spell Pierce. And since they played out this mURktide as a 4/4 and left 3 instants or sorceries in the yard, I'm really assuming that they've got a second copy of mURktide in hand. And so, yeah, they had the Spell Pierce. So I was going to get got by that either way. As expected, second copy of mURktide. And I decided to just scoop it up to that because, like, I'm taking 8 off this mURktide. I can play out another shadow or play out my shadow, but it's not a 1-turn clock. So I'm going to be pretty in trouble. And that's only if I find a land. If I don't find a land, I can't even play out the shadow. So game number 2, Mold of 6. This is kind of like one of those Magic Online matches where you feel the program is against you. Like game number 1, we never saw a third land. Game 2, we mulliganed to 6. We had a 1-land 7. We mulliganed to 6. We had a 1-land 6, but we had like Ragavan Bolt Heat and a couple iterations. Like if we find that second land. And we're just going to sit here and do a whole lot of nothing because we're, spoiler alert, never going to find the second land. So we're chilling. Like the hand was still Ragavan on the play, and I think mulling to 5 in a matchup like this is just might as well scoop it up. They play a hearse. So, of course, our best draw against an opponent that's just played an unlicensed hearse is a Croxa. So, we're just going to scoop and go to match 5. All right, match number 5. We are on the draw. No land 7. 6 is fine. We'll keep the second Ragavan in case I got an answer for the first. All right, it's just scam. We've had a really positive win rate against Scam recently, so I'm usually not too upset to see this matchup. We've got like Unholy Heats and Terminates in the main. A lot of ways to like answer a scammed creature. And if opponent like this doesn't answer Ragavan, then we've got a few looks off the top of their library as well. double spell. Get our Shredder Connive. We do find an Unholy Heat, which Drown in the Lock would turn on. So, an interesting spot here. Shadow trades with the Fury. I'm assuming if they're making this attack that they have another Undying effect. So, in hindsight, I really should have just blocked with the Ledger Shredder. Just thrown it under the bus, untapped with my Shadow. But for whatever reason, I'm like, all right, make them have it. And they have it. So be it. I think it's kind of a situation where I don't have Delirium. There's no guarantee that my opponent's going to play something to turn on Drown in the Lock. So even if I chump block with Ragavan, that's not helping Drown or Unholy Heat. So I kind of have to force the issue a little bit, which is why I attack with Ragavan, expecting for my opponent to attack back. I Drown in the Lock my Ragavan to get instant in my yard, and then Unholy Heat the Fury. And we go to top deck mode. But then they untap, they fetch, and they put a Grief on the stack. And I'm like, thank God. So I get to Drown in the Lock the Grief, and now Unholy Heat the Fury, and keep my Ragavan around. So just like best of all worlds. If I can avoid going down to 6, I would rather not be dead to Double Bolt. Like, the likelihood's pretty low that they have Double Bolt because they would have just killed the Ragavan by now. It's probably another Fury in hand. But I decided to search for an Elemental just in case something like Kroxa said Elemental for whatever reason. It does not, so... But I'm really thinking their top card, or their card in hand is a Fury. But I'm keeping back Harbinger in case they do find like a Ragavan or something. And opponent scoops it up. So apparently my guess is still it was a Fury and they didn't have a way to play it. Couldn't find a red card or the 5th land. All right, so this is game number 2. Opponent starts with a Leyline of the Void. Thoughtseize away our Ledger Shredder, so of course we draw a Ledger Shredder. It's kind of funny when the Thoughtseize bug like happens to your opponent when you're so used to it happening to you. Harbinger could have an Undying effect. The good thing about this scam matchup is they do go really low on cards really quickly. So if you're able to kind of fight through that initial wave, you can sometimes be able to rebound and rebuild. Get the basic island to play around Blood Moon in case they've got that turn 3. So they have Persist. They scam a Grief, an Undying Malice. We ditch all of our live cards, so they get to take nothing. They've got a dead draw coming off the top, so if we can just like find something live, that would be really nice. Or 2 fetch lands, sure. Dress Down is something, I guess. Hold on to the Dress Down to hopefully stop like a Fury. Opponent didn't play out their 4th land that we know about, so I know they can't hard cast a Fury this turn. They do have another scam effect. We get to stop a little bit of damage, find double Unholy Heat. I should have done this on their upkeep in case they did have like an Undying effect, but oh well. Hard cast a Grief. Cool, we got nothing. You know what we're drawing? Probably also nothing. So this has been the flood from hell. And it continues. So yeah, that's fun. But we get to go to game number 3. Game number 3, we get to be on the play. I don't know about y'all, but I'm a fan of being on the play game number 3. Not a big fan of one-landers, but it is a one-lander with like a Ragavan and Thoughtseize. An opponent has showed that answering turn 1 Ragavan is not necessarily their strong suit. So they answer or take Thoughtseize, take Ledger Shredder. I was a little surprised that they left us with Expressive Iteration. We see Undying Malice, which means we get to Kroxa and scam our Kroxa, get a couple cards out of their hand, see how they like it. Harbinger is a great one to knock out of hand because now they don't have just like a chump blocker for Ragavan. Opponent decides to not attack. So I could have gotten the Ledger Shredder there. I probably should have, but I really wanted the mana. So I decided to be a little bit greedy there. Like, opponent's not attacking with the grief, so we find Dress Down, we find Kroxa, so we're able to just like put a Kroxa into the battlefield. Thoughtseize them. We see Fury, Grief, and an Undying effect. Take the Undying effect because they're going to have to discard one of the others to the Kroxa. And then they've just got like a big elemental they can't do anything with. Again, could have kept the Turok. Don't really feel like I need the Turok. I know my opponent has got Fury and an Unknown in hand. I attack. Either they discard the Fury, keep whatever the other card is, make their block, and I say, cool. Or, like in this case, they discard something I don't know about, the Malakir Rebirth. Now I know their last card's a Fury. I don't care about that, so I can just Unholy Heat the Grief before blocks. And they scoop to that. So we would have gotten in for a big chunk of damage. Gotten pretty good board state. They couldn't find like a red card and an Undying effect to get back the Fury right there. I guess I could find a Persist and get back some elemental, but we don't really care about that because we just have an active Kroxa going. But either way, nice little 4-1 league. Very solid. Kaito really showed off against Eldrazi Tron. Kroxa looked solid. Kroxa looks solid when you don't get like mana screwed or you have options, and Kroxa is one of them. Kroxa doesn't always look good when it's the only thing that you can do at a given time. But either way, it did show off pretty well there. What else? I did enjoy the extra bolt against Eldrazi Tron with the Ulamog turn, because usually I'd usually be on a Spell Pierce in that slot, and if we had Spell Pierce there, then we would have been dead to the Ulamog. I might want to find room for a Fatal Push, like maybe one. I'm not huge on Fatal Push because I think we're already playing like 2 Terminate, 4 Unholy Heat, 4 Drown in the Lock is like really reactive cards, and the more we go on the reactive plan, the worse like Ledger Shredder and Kroxa get. So I do want to keep that in mind. But having an additional answer for a Ledger Shredder that is connived would be nice without needing Delirium and without wanting to fire off a Terminate. Yeah, other than that, list has been solid. Turok's one I'm kind of trying around right now. Haven't been swayed one way or the other. I've really liked Turok in the past, so I'm hoping that more games in with it, it'll keep doing well. But Kaito has also been like extremely good in that slot, so that's kind of my 2 cents at the moment. Either way, I hope you enjoy the rest of your April Fool's Day, and drop a like, drop a comment. Like I said, really trying to grow the YouTube presence so that hopefully we can expand going forward. Otherwise, catch y'all back live later at some point. Have the link to the stream down below as well as the deck list. So take it easy. Enjoy some good food and company. Catch y'all back later. Adios for now.